Stefano, buongiorno. What I'd like to speak about for the next 20-25 minutes is tell you a little bit about the IIRC, tell you why we think there is a need for a new reporting model, corporate reporting model, outline our international IR framework, talk a little bit about how integrated reporting is being taken up around the world, point to some resources that might help you explore further, and then just a slide on recapping what I think are the key messages. So who is the IIRC? So the IIRC, as I think Stefano mentioned, was created in 2010 under the auspices of the International Federation of Accountants and GRI, the Global Reporting Initiative. People were invited at the invitation of HRH, His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales, to a meeting in England. And we had there, I would say, about 30 people, absolutely top-class business leaders from around the world, including the chief executives of all of the big four accounting firms and Grant Thornton and BDO. So, we had really top people there. And we continue to have the top people represented on our council and our working groups, etc. So these people come from the investor groups, they're companies who are reporting, regulators, non-government organisations, standard setters, and of course accountants. Pleased to say that Stefano is on our council representing Global Wiki. The vision of the IIRC is to align capital allocation and corporate behaviour to wider goals of financial stability and sustainable development through the cycle of integrated reporting and integrated thinking. So looking at that, there's an internal and there's an external face to integrated reporting. The external face to integrated reporting is the report itself. And that is about helping capital allocation. It's directed to investors, to provide us the financial capital, to help them to make decisions about how to allocate financial capital in the economy. The internal face of integrated reporting is about integrated thinking. It helps management, it helps boards of directors change, improve their corporate behaviour. And through this internal and external face of integrated reporting, we hope to affect the wider goals of sustainability, sustainable development, and financial stability. Of course, integrated reporting is not the only thing that is going to achieve financial stability and global sustainability. But we have our contribution to make. And we believe the best way for the corporate reporting world to make a contribution to those two goals is through integrated reporting. So when these people came together in 2010, they came together because they believed that we needed a new model for corporate reporting. And when I say corporate reporting, I'm not talking about just financial reporting, and I'm not talking about just sustainability reporting. I'm not talking about just governance reporting or just remuneration reporting or just management commentary, but I'm talking about all of those things and how they relate to each other. Because a theme I want to bring out is the idea of systems, connectivity. These things need to relate to each other rather than being silos in boxes. So why is that important? And this is the same slide, or this is pretty much the same slide that Stefano presented. There's a couple of reasons. One is that value is much more than just financial value. This is a graph of the S&P 500, so the same one, yeah, top 500 companies in the US, and the amount of their market capitalisation that's represented by what you can see on the balance sheet. And 40 years ago, in 1975, there was only less than 20% of the value of a company was not on the balance sheet, but now it's completely reversed. Over 80% of value is not on the balance sheet. So what's in that? What's in there? And Stefano's spoken quite a bit about that, about intangibles. So we recognise there is a need for financial reporting is not serving our purposes. We need something else. Current reporting also has a mismatch between what's in the report, which is largely focused on past performance. It's backward looking. It has a little bit about forecasts and plans and a little bit about strategy, but mostly it's about what's here. And that's true for all forms of reporting at the moment. We need to move to a situation where reporting is more about what actually drives value. And value is driven by strategy and governance, the implementation of plans, and of course it's all based on business as usual, and so you can't drop that from your reporting, but you need a lot more focus on the future and strategy, governance and plans. Okay, so value is more than financial, the reporting mismatch, other reasons we need a new financial model. And actually I should point out, I call it a new financial model. You will recognise many of these ideas. They're not all that new. I think what the Integrated Reporting Council has done has brought them together with a powerful coalition of people supporting them and driving momentum, and brought them together into a framework that's coherent and can be adopted by companies. So not everything I say is new. Integrated Reporting Council did not invent all of this. It brought it all together and is promoting it and getting momentum behind it. So one of the ways that companies and others have tried to overcome what they see as the problems of reporting at the moment is by increasing the volume of information. So that, for example, financial statements getting just bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. You would all know that. New reports are being created to meet new information needs. So, go back 20 years ago, we didn't have such a thing as a sustainability report. You probably didn't have separate remuneration or governance reports or management commentary. We're getting new reports to meet new information needs. We're getting piecemeal addition of bits of information here and there. So Stefano referred to the EU directive on non-financial reporting, which requires a few more bits of information to be added into the mix. But where is this all coming together? What we're ending up with is this explosion of unconnected and sometimes, maybe often, immaterial information that you're being required to report. We felt that needed to come together. So towards a solution, what we think is, what are the elements of a solution? Well, let's focus on value creation. Let's not just think about financial, but go beyond. Let's be concise. Instead of getting more information, let's be concise, get better, more focused information. Let's have a strategic focus, focus on the strategy, focus on the future orientation for decision making. And above all else, make it connected. Make sure it tells a story. This picture, it's the same pieces in the puzzle square as it is in the last square. But when you put them together like this, they don't tell a story. It's not until they're connected do they tell you what the story is. This is current reporting. That's integrated reporting. An integrated report should tell a story. It should tell the value creation story of the organisation. Okay, just picking up on this theme of connectedness and integration. The whole word integrated, holistic, systems-based. And I think an audience here in Italy is probably going to be more receptive to this idea than in many other parts of the world, particularly the Anglo world from which I come, because, as I understand it, your economia aziendale, is the manner in which you teach business, the manner in which you teach accounting, is based around systems. You have a better comprehension of systems, perhaps, than do others in other parts of the world. So some of the aspects of this connectedness, this integration, an organisation is connected to as in inseparable from its external environment. It affects the environment affects it. That has to be taken into account when telling its story. An organisation as a whole is made up of component parts. Often in companies they're silos, they don't talk to each other. But they need to talk to each other, and a story about the company needs to talk about how they relate to each other and how that company itself relates to the outside world. There's a connection between the past. You need information about the past for accountability, how that links to the present and where that's taking you in the future. That's what decisions are made about, the future. So you need that connection from past through to future. You need to connect the short term, the medium term and the long term. And you mentioned it, Stefano, about this short-termism, this focus on the short term, the next year, the next profit earning, the next financial statements. It's leading us down the wrong path. We need to focus on the medium and the longer term if we're going to have financial stability and sustainable development. Aspects of an organisation are linked. Strategy, governance, performance, prospects, they're all linked. They're all part of the story. I'll get to the inputs, business model, outputs and outcomes in a second, but we need a story to tell about how an organisation takes capitals from the world, uses them in its business model, creates outputs, and those outputs have outcomes. A really important point, value for the organisation is linked to value for others. A lot of organisations think that value is making money. Well, a company can make money, but it won't do that forever if it doesn't recognise that it co-creates value with its stakeholders. It has to co-create with stakeholders. It can't exist in isolation. And that's an important point that is recognised in integrated reporting. This co-creation of value, value for the organisation and value for others, they have to coexist. Financial versus non-financial, Stefano has spoken about that financial is not the whole story. Quantitative versus qualitative as well. You know, we can have KPIs on things other than the financials, but again, they're still not going to tell the whole story. You need to link it all together through narrative. Okay, so the framework, having these thoughts in mind for 3 years, late 2010 till December 2013, the IIRC created the International Integrated Reporting Framework. It has 3 core features, and I won't go into these in detail, but the first core feature is fundamental concepts. It talks about value creation. It talks about the capitals, which I'll mention again in a minute. So it's the conceptual underpinning of what integrated reporting is. The next core feature is guiding principles, and you'll recognise some of these if you're from the financial accounting world, because some of them are very similar to the qualitative characteristics of financial information. So consistency, comparability, reliability, completeness, materiality. But there are some important additions in here. Things like connectivity of information that I've spoken about, conciseness, we're talking about concise reporting, stakeholder relationships. To make a point on that, we're not saying that the organisation should, in its integrated report, be directing the information to all its stakeholders. What we're saying there is direct the report to providers of financial capital, investors, but in telling them the story of your value creation, recognise and report on how you as a company relate to your stakeholders. Are you meeting their expectations? Because that's important to how you will be able to create value in future. Okay, strategic focus and future orientation I've mentioned. Content elements. So this is the third core feature of the integrated reporting framework. It's buckets, it's categories of information. It's different, and Stefano's talked about tick box and compliance. This is not a tick box compliance exercise. There are 8 content elements, and each one is represented by one question. So the question, for example, it's very principles-based. The question, for example, for governance is, along the lines of, tell us how your governance structure supports the creation of value by the organisation. There's some dot points that might give you some guidance in the framework that might help with, but it's not tick this box. It's not tell us how many committees you've got or what the skills of your directors are, or how many meetings each director attended, or how much remuneration they get. All those things may well be very important, and that might be how you tell your story, but it's up to you to tell your unique creation story by answering these 8 questions. So, as I say, the governance one, how does your governance structure support value creation? And you tell those stories not in separate segments, but you tell it as a story, and having read the whole story, you should know the answer to those 8 questions. So it's not question 1, question 2, question 3. You intertwine and connect all the answers to create the story. Okay, this is a key diagram that's in the framework, and I'll just explain it a little bit because it's really the core of integrated reporting. Integrated reporting, as I've said, thinks of an organisation as existing within an external environment. So here, it exists within its external environment. From that environment includes things like, you know, the economy, how the economy is going, the political situation in where it's working, sustainability type concerns, climate change, demographic changes, IT developments, you know, anything you can think of that is affecting you externally as a company is included in there. From that external world, an organisation, wrong button, apologies. From that external world, an organisation takes, if you like, or extracts resources, relationships in the form of what we call capitals. So they take financial capital, of course. They have money invested in them, they borrow money. But they use manufactured capital, plant, property, equipment. But broader than that, they use things that they don't even own. And they use them to create value, such as, you know, infrastructure, you know, the trading floor here at the Bourse. They use roads and railways and aeroplanes. Okay, all of that manufactured capital helps them create value. Intellectual capital, Stefano's talked quite a bit about that. Human capital, your people. Social and relationships capital, how you get along with your community, with the others with whom you deal, and how they in turn get along and organise themselves also affects how you can create value. And of course natural capital, no need to say any more. So an organisation exists in its external environment, it draws in various capitals, it uses them to create outputs, and those outputs have outcomes, and those outcomes can be expressed in changes to the capitals. So it comes in, it goes out different, the capitals go out different from how they started off. And that actually is really, if you got that right, that is the story of an integrated report. That's what an integrated report is trying to do. How does your organisation relate to its environment, its external environment? How does it use the capitals, transform them, and then those capitals, remembering, at the end of a period, are the starting point for the capitals for the following period. So that's basically the picture. The actual diagram in the framework is more detailed. It has this in the middle, which is trying to explain the organisation itself, and really those things are nothing more than the content elements that I spoke of earlier. Okay. So what's been the take-up of IR to date, and where are we going with this? Make no mistake, the mission of the IIRC is to establish integrated reporting and thinking within mainstream business practice as the norm in public and private sectors. We see integrated reporting as being the norm. Everyone will be doing integrated reporting in time. That's how we see it. And an integrated report, we see, will be the lead report for organisations. It'll be the concise value creation story from which you can drill down into other reports and information sets, all of which will be important. So you'll still have your financial statements, you'll probably still have your sustainability report, you may have remuneration reports, etc. But the lead report, in our view, will be this concise report. The IIRC is trying to drive this momentum, or is driving this momentum, through the market. It's market-led. It believes that integrated reporting is an idea whose time has come. Voltaire, I think. It's an idea whose time has come. So it will gravitate, people will gravitate to it, and they are. Regulators, legislators, stock exchanges, standard setters have a role to play. In fact, they have several roles that they could play. One role, and the one that we would ask them to play, or two that we would ask them to play, are the first two, to remove any barriers to integrated reporting. And the barriers can be all sorts of things. So where I come from, Australia, the directors are very concerned that the legal environment doesn't allow them to make future-orientated statements. They're very concerned about personal legal liability. So one of the things that integrated reporting is asking of legislators in Australia is to change the law, to change the liability regime. Another barrier, and it's common across, I would think, most jurisdictions, is the preponderance, the growth of reporting requirements, those bits of information that are being added. I guess we're asking regulators, legislators, listing organisations, standard setters to stop and pause and stop adding bits and pieces and just increasing the burden on companies, but allow companies the time and space to focus on value creation and a concise integrated report. In some jurisdictions, there's a comply or explain regime. South Africa, as you may know, where a lot of this started with Professor Mervyn King, who was still is our Chair of Council, have a comply or explain regime for the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. So all companies in Johannesburg Stock Exchange either have to apply integrated reporting or explain why they didn't. And over the, must be 3 or 4 years now that has been in, there's just been a steady increase in the number who are choosing to apply integrated reporting rather than explain why they didn't. And the reason for that is because they're seeing the benefits of doing integrated reporting. So that's one option for regulators, etc. Another option might be for them to require integrated reporting. It's not an option that we, as the Integrated Reporting Council, are promoting because we fear that it could lead to the compliance tick box sort of mindset, and we just don't think that's the right way to develop. In some places there are integrated reporting lookalikes. So for example, in the UK, there's something called a strategic report. In my jurisdiction, Australia, we have an operating and financial review. They're statutory reports. They're close to integrated reporting. They're similar to integrated reporting, but they are statutory compliance-driven reports. Similarly, management commentary that Stefano mentioned, the IASB creation is similar to integrated reporting. As I say, it's not all new. But the difference, a really important difference for all of these, is that they focus typically on explaining the financial statements. So they anchor themselves back to the financials. Rather than anchoring to value creation and telling a story, they try and explain the financials. We think that's probably not the right way to go. Okay, so within IIRC, one way we've found helpful to let companies understand integrated reporting better is through creating networks. And we have a business network in particular that's quite strong that developed from a pilot program where we had over 100 companies testing these ideas as we developed them. And I think, Laura, 7 companies in Italy are members of the business network. If you're interested in joining the business network or finding out more, please ask me or speak with Laura Girelli, sorry, got it wrong even after having asked. During the break. So, but we have other networks as well. We have a public sector network, pension funds, technology initiative, banking, accounting bodies and academic networks are about to launch. Insurance companies and of course investors as the primary user are an important network for feedback. Okay, so I said companies are picking it up because they see the benefits. There's over 1,000 organisations doing integrated reporting now. Over 50% of CEOs, CFOs and COOs say they're moving toward integrated reporting, and another 35% say they will move toward it in the short term. So, you know, if you're in the 15% that's left over, I guess a little bit out of step. We have these 750 participants in regional networks like the network and the network that Stefano is organising. Japan's a great example. Japan, there's been encouragement from the top. The Prime Minister, actually, Abe, thank you. Yeah, Abenomics, yes, has mentioned integrated reporting and the importance of it. And the people have listened. And now we've got 182 companies doing integrated reporting in Japan. Actually, just another one where that sort of thing has happened is Sri Lanka, Malaysia, Singapore. They're all getting high-level political impetus to do integrated reporting. Similarly, the G20 have just met in Turkey, and they have endorsed in one way or another integrated reporting, saying that it's good for long-term investment in infrastructure. In South Africa, non-executive directors, where they're implementing this, non-executive directors believe integrated thinking increases the quality of organisations' dialogue with shareholders and other stakeholders. So they're seeing 79% seeing real benefits. 87% of participants in our pilot program believe that investors better understood their strategy. 92% see increased understanding in what value creation means for them. 80% of investors believe that the quality of reporting, so what you report to investors, affects their professional perception of the quality of management. So, I mean, that's in itself is a very significant finding. Okay, so I'd just like to point to some resources. I won't go into these in detail. I've got 2 slides here. One is about the corporate reporting dialogue. So taking a leaf out of our own book of saying systems are important, we recognise that corporate reporting itself is a system. And we're not the only player. There are a lot of players. In particular, standard setters are players in this corporate reporting world. So we've brought together the key standard setters in the corporate reporting world, the ones up there on the screen, and form what we call a corporate reporting dialogue. So they are now starting, for the very first time, to talk to each other to work out how their different frameworks relate to each other. And their first piece of work that they've released is a corporate reporting landscape map. And it uses the International Integrated Reporting Framework as an anchor and compares each of the frameworks or standards of these different standard setters to our capitals and our content elements. So if you're interested to know how integrated reporting relates to these other forms of reporting, that's a very good starting point. I won't talk to this at all. It's just saying there's lots of stuff on our website. Please go there if you're after some stuff. And in particular, you might want to see examples of good integrated reporting, and that's that one over there. There's a special website with examples. Okay, just to recap on what I think are the key points. Last slide. Integrated reporting is not trying to replace financial statements. You're an accountant, you're safe. I'm an accountant, I'm safe. Financial statements will continue, there's no doubt. But what we're saying is this is, in a sense, above that. It's a different slant. Integrated reporting is not trying to replace sustainability reports. Interesting too, there's been a common perception that integrated reporting is just bringing together, combining financial statements and sustainability reports. That's not what it's about. I hope I've explained that that's not what it's about. It's a concise extraction from those and other places and making the connections and telling the story. I talk in terms of corporate reporting, not sustainability or financial reporting. IR is the future, we believe, of corporate reporting. IR might replace management commentary. As I said, management commentary is often similar, and well done strategic report or management commentary, if it stops focusing just on the financials and introduces more about strategy in the future and talks about other diverse capitals, then maybe management commentary is the right way to go. IR is not just about measurement, financial or other KPIs. Measurement's important, you can't do without it. But the narrative that brings the measurements together is equally as important, we believe. So while initiatives like the Wiki and NIBR initiatives are very important, they're not the entire story for integrated reporting. IR is not trying to monetize reporting. We're not trying to come up with a number that says a company is worth X. We're not trying to have all your KPIs turned into euros or dollars. That might be part of a story, and some people want to do that, and that's fine if that's how they think telling their story works best. But that's not at the heart of integrated reporting. We're talking about value and value creation rather than valuation. As I mentioned before, IR has 2 faces. It has the external face, the report, and the internal face, the thinking, breaking down silos within an organisation. Last 2 dot points. IR, what is it about? It's about you telling your unique value creation story. And when you do that, be concise and be connected. Grazie.
Thank you. Grazie, Michael.